All right, let's jump into it. 9 past 10 on 21st of May. Going to make this a pretty quick one today. Just gonna shoot off, get a couple of things done, but always got to have a look over the charts first, see if there's anything we can sort of pick out, set some alerts for the day, and that way it makes it a bit easier. Sort of obviously not in front of the screens, can still enact a couple of bits and pieces. Look, main sort of things overnight, we saw continued weakness. We're seeing that into the start of the day with the US dollar. It's breaking some key levels. We saw gold be the biggest sort of beneficiary of this as well, and it sort of really seemed to sort of take off. Just have a quick look through. There's not really so much news that I can see that could have been attributed to this. Excuse me. We did have a couple of Fed speakers, which somebody accounted for some of the movement. But from what I could see, I think it was probably around that sort of 11, probably I suppose that lineup was around that 11:30 time. So probably as these speakers were coming out, that we sort of started to see gold really sort of start to take off, and quick little back test, and then bang, exploded up, and a move we haven't seen in gold, which feels like for a while. For a while, it seemed like every sort of second or third hour we were getting sort of 30, 40 buck moves and that, but it's been a little bit more subdued recently. And as that sort of took off, I think I'm just having a look now, we went about 50 bucks in 2 hours. So yeah, certainly took off to the top side there. But as far as that, couldn't really see a great deal of news in that. Trump speaking overnight, typical kind of things. No headlines have sort of really sort of massively jumped out. Going through today, we don't have really much data through Asia at all. CPI out of the UK later today, and this is what I mentioned on the weekend. So this seems like quite a steep sort of jump up. So that's really sort of bucking the trend, because a lot of the major central banks and that seem to be right down into those 2% areas at the moment, and not sort of reversing, the better part of 1% for the headline number, and the core obviously ticking up there as well. So it's probably something to keep an eye on. Um, Rest of Europe, not a great deal, and through US again, sort of nothing really sort of major. A couple of these guys speaking again. Same two, yeah. So the same two were speaking last. Barkin, Bostock, Bowman. No, different. This guy's different. I don't really sort of follow the Fed speakers as to who's hawkish, who's sort of more of a dovish sort of take on things. But certainly, when you have the reactions the way that they did, it's worth sort of taking note of. But yeah, so all in all, pretty quiet on the news front. So yeah, we'll flick on to the charts here, and this is the big sort of move that I'm sort of looking at here, because US dollar's actually given up this back test here, which it tried to hold, as you can see a couple of times, even came right down into it and then sort of took off. So now we can sort of look down, what other levels have we got sort of marked out, where may it sort of be coming down to. Um, I think the fact that it's broken this structure is quite sort of quite significant, because as you can see, these failed smaller structures are fine, but at least the buyers have been coming in and holding these other areas. They've allowed it through here. Hasn't been a big stampede. And so it hasn't sort of hit here and just got bang, sort of massive drop down. So it's not like, okay, hey, we got a bunch of stops. And if you look from a sort of technical point of view, there's a lot of chop around this area. So I don't think it's going to, bang, we're back down over here. But it's certainly worth taking note that this has now, the buyers try to hold, try to hold, try to hold. And this is perfectly represents what I was sort of saying, that, things, if they take a while to come back to it, they're not going to break the first time. Second time, closer. Third time, even closer. And it's just like tap, 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 bang. So if you only tap every now and then, it's going to take a while to go through. But if you keep tap, 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 bang, bang, and it's pushed through. So early trade Asia, it has actually sort of continued that sort of sell-off that we saw last night, as you can see. So this is where those those speakers for the Fed were, around that sort of 11 o'clock. And as you can see from that, it's just bang, straight sell down out of US dollar into gold, which is just tipped over 3,300 this morning. So we'll see how much this sort of continues, but it's seeming like the sort of, the beneficiary of this sort of major weak gold, US dollar weakness is gold, with the flows. So we'll see if that's sort of going to continue. So as I said, I don't think this is just going to go straight down. Possibly it drops a little bit more down into this little support area around the sort of 99 0.8, I would expect pretty much sort of maybe a rebalancing, come back up and close this morning's gap. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. I don't think we're going to get a big break through the day. I mean, who knows? Let's say it's generally sort of when you get these Fed talkers or speakers and that, like, it obviously has a reaction, but again, it's just words. It's not like a data point. It's not hard data saying this. It's just a couple of sort of endless. I mean, there's I don't know how many Fed speakers there are, but there's a lot of them. And they're always popping up and they're saying their viewpoints and this and that. So you wouldn't think that alone would be enough to sort of go, okay, bang, we're breaking out. It's not hard data. It's just sort of potentially saying their outlook. And even some of their commentary and that wasn't overly all sort of like completely dovish kind of sort of stuff. So some of it was, hey, look, they're not in any rush to move, i.e. sort of cut, because at the moment they're not looking to hike. So hold is obviously doing nothing. So when they say they're not in any rush to move, well, that's what they're talking about, obviously a cut. So yeah, you wouldn't think that's enough to sort of really destroy the whole thing, but certainly the markets had a little bit of an impact with that kind of stuff. So yeah, around this kind of area here, I think sort of underneath 88.5, we'll just put an alert there just to put some eyes on it. To sort of see if it's going to go down a little bit further. Underneath there, you're looking 99.60, had a little bit of support. But as I said, look, it's very choppy through this area here. So I imagine you will find support sort of through here. But the two areas that I've been looking for is obviously 99.8. If it breaks through there, 99.6 for some sort of rally. But this is a greater sort of impact than I thought those speakers would have had anyway. To sort of negate this kind of sell down here, really you want to get back up above 117. So let's just put a little alert there as well and just say bounce recovery. Doesn't mean that the whole thing's sort of recovered and it's a fake out move, but obviously sort of, you got buyers here, you got buyers here. You want to be able to comfortably get back up above this support and then look to sort of trap some people down here if that were to be what they're doing. But, this is not really, it doesn't look like a trap move kind of thing. You know what I mean? We saw gold trap the other day. This just looks like it's just a slow death by 1,000 sell-offs, cuts, that kind of thing. So we'll see how this one plays out here. On the Aussie, because Aussie's obviously sort of, found support where it kind of needed to, where it has time and time again. And this is absolutely frustrating. As I said, there's a couple of charts at the moment that are incredibly frustrating. Aussie, silver, and gold silver ratio. And they are just almost impossible, next to impossible to sort of trade if you're trying to sort of hold on to anything. It's not too bad in terms of structural, as you can see. There was a bit of this falling resistance. I wasn't a big fan of this one, to be honest, because we only had the two touches up here and it chopped through. But more the top side of it seems to be dancing around with it. It seems to have found a nice sort of horizontal support. So that's still where we want to get underneath. Underneath 64, I said yesterday, sort of with the RBA, that sort of like if we get a sort of more basically a cut and a dovish sort of bit of talk, 64 was the level I was looking at. It got down to where we hit 60. No, it's actually got down into the 90s. But again, it's just unable to sort of get that close that it needs to really show an absence of buyers here. And buyers, 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 then US dollar sells off. Aussie beneficiary of that a little bit as well. And it's not so much that the Aussie is sort of moving, that the Aussie is sort of like a desirable thing to buy. It's just that the US dollar is a more desirable thing to sell than Aussie is to buy, if that makes sense. So it's like they're not buying it because Aussie's great. It's only moving up because they're selling US dollars and US dollars getting weaker. So just by natural effect of things, Aussie dollar appreciates it in across to it. Now, if you do your little sort of breakdown of this, US dollar is, it's selling down, so US dollar is pushing it up. China got the breakout, but then smacked back down on the nose. But I would still say that's in that camp, and RBA is definitely a bit more dovish than were even sort of predicted. So again, this is not big breakout material, But till you get this one moving in this direction here, so US dollar buying, it's still going to be a thorn in the side of the downside moves. And this is what I'll say. It's sort of like, we can have RBA saying we're dovish. We can have China, attempting to do a little bit better or worse or whatever with the yuan. But this is the driver. And these two only just get added on to the bigger move. So it's kind of like, okay, that's why we're not moving anywhere. Because US dollar selling off means we go up, which we have seen a little bit of a push up at since that point. But, we're not breaking out, are we? No, because the yuan and the RBA come into effect as well. So, I mean, this is a really sort of simplistic sort of way of viewing it. But if you get these three ticking in the same direction, but this is the main one, then you're going to see the bigger breakouts. And while these are inverse to each other, this is what we've been seeing. So, yeah, I mean, Aussie is being held up, but as I keep saying, I think it's only being held up because US dollar is so weak. So, look, buyers have stepped back in here. It's coming back up to test this level that I mentioned yesterday. RBA came out around that sort of 47 level. Maybe that's an area to target. Should we break above sort of 30s? I don't think it's at the point where we're going to say, okay, hey, look, let's break out and move up in that, because yeah, Bullock was actually sort of stepping in, saying it sounded quite sort of dovish with things and that. So again, I still think that look, 65 and 64 are your main ones. Obviously, sort of because we're hanging around this area, this is the sort of thought. If it does come back down here, if we do see some US dollar buying, if we do see another attack on 64 today, I think that'll be the time that it breaks. We've still got the sort of like the first sort of target still only just down here. Whoops. Which is really the the last line of defense for Aussie. And like I said with the other one, if you take a while to come back to it, it's not going to break first time. So most likely what you could see, should we break down through 64, you might find some supports around these areas. Obviously the buyers have been here and here, but something that'd be your path down. I don't think you're chopping straight down through anything. And this is all, again, based on the idea that US dollar can be bought up, which will be pushing Aussie down. You get those three ticks moving downward. That's how I see Aussie breaking down underneath 62. But obviously for the moment, it's grinding back up. It's coming into a little bit of a sort of a resistance area. Let me put this back up here a little bit. If we see like a bias here, there's a small little zone just through here. Not a major thing, more just a speed bump rather than sort of big rejection area. As you can see, it's obviously held as a little bit of support on the way up through there. So look, above 40, you're targeting sort of 60s again to sort of see what it does, and it's back in the game. But really, more or less, it's just sideways. So I'm still looking for the downside move, but of course, while US dollar's being sold off, you've got to let that sort of little grind up play out. And move along, gold. This was a big one that sort of broke out yesterday. So structurally, it's not working too badly. Obviously, sort of we're looking for a more of a continuation move down. But this is what I was talking about, particularly just before. This is where you had your more trap move. And if you look on a 4 hour, you might be able to see it better. That 3160 was where we were looking at. Obviously not just myself. A lot of people came to 3160, dropped down here. This is more just hit stops, trap shorts. And then this reaction here, and then this move back was the tell. So as you can see, buyers moved up, buyers moved up, buyers moved up again, and you can see that they're moving up the bid each time, putting pressure on a straight solid line of sellers through this area here, and then that was the time that it took off and just went through over here. So a couple of areas on the top side here that I'm looking at, possibly to close the gap at 33.22. Put an alert there. So closing gap there. Look, if I got an option to sort of sell it from 33.60s, I'd take that. I think potentially what we could see though, maybe, I mean, look, it's very hard to sort of say with gold recently because it's not a great, when it's been bought up, it's pretty much just defies all technical analysis. Like it just sort of just goes kind of thing. But structurally, that's what you'd want to sort of see. Maybe some sort of retest of, 3260s. But as I said, what we've sort of been seeing with gold more recently is when it goes, whoops, it just goes. And there's no sort of technical analysis you can really apply to it. You sort of wait for your pullbacks and it just jams up higher. It is sort of roll. Looks, as I said, it looks like it's kind of rolling over a little bit up the top here, but very much we've seen a lot of this sort of set up recently where it pulls back, looks like it's lower, and then bang, jams up another couple of levels. So I've seen some calls from big people sort of saying, hey, look, we're going back to 3,500 and continuation, and this was it. This is the big pullback. I mean, certainly it was a big pullback. 38% of the yearly. It was 61% of April's move. There was a big confluence at this area, and we expected to get reaction, and we did. This move is a trap out. This second drive down, this is the actual one where, as you can see, almost respected it to the dollar at 31.60, which is the number we've been calling for, I've been calling for weeks. So, as it sort of moves through, you need to sort of squeeze these people out. This caught some people off guard. Now you make them feel the pain and sort of push it up to the top side. That's how it's sort of moving here. But the fact that it's broken through all these horizontals, like this move here was a very fast accelerated move. I would have thought more stops would be sitting around these areas here, 3270s, but it really just, once it took off, it just really moved quite quickly there. So at the moment, it looks like it's just obviously sort of start of Asia, just chilling a little bit. See what happens at 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock has been the sort of the Asia gold buying hour. So that I think that'll be telling today. So come 11 o'clock, either Asia's back on board and we're going to see some moves like this at least, and it's just up, 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 up. Because see, this sort of rolled over a little bit here, and then jammed up, and then chilled and chilled. So I wouldn't say this is definitely coming back down here, but I think it'll be telling to see what they're doing with it. So if they buy it hard, they're just going to be sort of straight up here, and we're at 33.70 this today, and it's not. Previously, prior to this year, it would have been unheard of, but it's not unheard of now. So as I say, this gold Aussies just shot up 10 points as well. So look, I think definitely we could see some more upside before we see any sort of further sort of pullback here. I think when you get these big buys and these big moves, look at this. That's how it ran. It went bang straight up here, $50. You need to respect that. Thought about it, grind it on. Though structurally, you would say, okay, a retest of 32.62. But the way that gold's been running recently, this thing could just keep on going straight up. 3270, 3360, 3370, this kind of area here, big falling resistance. We've also got a horizontal around the zone here as well. That's where I'd like to sort of take some shorts if I get the opportunity to. Move along silver, and silver into top side of its big box. Just the same sort of garbage price action. I mean, that is just a big, massive range. And, we've gone from testing the bottom, this could have only just been, end of last week, a week or so ago. And now we're back up to the top side here. Sellers like to be sort of sitting around here. We've seen it a couple of times. Break above here, you've still got these horizontal sort of 3350 to deal with. So I don't see any major breakouts here. Certainly gold-silver ratio is not giving away anything. These are quite strong moves. And obviously both in gold and silver. So gold-silver ratio is very flat. So gold-silver ratio, just quickly look at it here. All in all, it's just really, I mean, if you look at the kind of moves and flows up and down we've had, this is just grinding sideways. So typically you'll see sort of obviously when one's highly in demand, or in this case gold, you'll see the bigger move there, or you'll see silver outperform here, silver outperform here. But because they're both running, it's still pretty much just going flat. So it's not really sort of giving away much with this. I've got to sort of probably start charting this out a little bit more again to sort of see if we can pull anything out of it, because the fact that it's quite flat sort of feels that it's not really a bull metals bull market, silver will generally outperform gold. So you'll see the whole market will be moving in this direction. Um, that's when you can say, okay, it's a metals bull market, and it's moving this way. Silver outperforms, so chart moves down. Sort of fear factor kind of thing of stuff is typically more up. So you know what I mean. Gold will outperform silver because it's being treated as a safe haven, which is obviously risk off. So you're not really getting either of these sort of scenarios play out at the moment. It's really just, I mean, yeah, it's slightly grinding up here, but nothing like these kind of, wild swings that we've seen previously. It's really just a grind through here, which makes me a little bit cautious of this gold move. Because, as I said, if it was like, okay, yep, risk off, gold's back in charge, you'd expect to see this. If it was like, hey, bulls market, sort of bull metal market, you'd see this. But we're not getting anything. So it's a very hard read from that at the moment. Back onto silver, as I said, back at the top of this range. I mean, sellers have been here previously. We've seen it. A break above here would be interesting. I'm just going to put it a little bit lower, technically above sort of like, 33.75 is where you'd want to see it. I don't know why this isn't coming up with messages straight away. Moving out of range. I've been sort of on the sideline with silver for a bit. I mean, there's a nice little triangle that we drew through here, and obviously you can see that broken gave a pretty good little trade yesterday, but I'm not involved with this at the moment. As I said, I think the whole story is just US dollar weakness. So as people dump out of the US dollar, then we sort of start to see these sort of areas pick up a little bit just by general flow of capital because you've got to stick your money somewhere. Copper, still range inside a range. Check back with you later. I suppose you got a little bit of this falling resistance. This was a fake out, so I didn't include it in this falling resistance. It's kind of chopped through it a couple of times, so not a big fan of this one here. So I'm just going to get rid of you for now. Get rid of you, and it's a range inside a range. Still nothing sort of super spectacular. And then sort of China through its falling resistance. It's medium-term falling resistance. Broke up here, bashed into its horizontal, and then sold down. It's a very tough move for this thing here. Is this broken here? I'd say you'd want to hold this if you're looking to sort of continue this little push up here. Yeah, it's like this is a very strong horizontal. As you can see, rejected down, loud in, boom, 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 boom. I think again, you've got a lot of sort of headaches with this level here. The horizontal, the falling resistance. I think that's making things very tough here. And as you can see, it's being sold into a little bit down here. So again, look, still in a range really. Top side's very difficult. It does look like it's sort of grinding, showing a little bit of life, but nothing really of note at the moment. I think it's probably more in the camp of a failed little rejection, and it's just even into a smaller range, inside a range down the bottom here. But that's pretty much it for the markets. What we've done: silver, gold, Aussie, DXY, copper, and USD. All right, that's it from me.